So I have Larry Goldberg here because it is Monday afternoon,
That's
and
good news.
there was there has to be some good news out there somewhere. Tesla was down a bit today, but were you
Not good
shocked?
news.
Were you shocked that it was down? No, I didn't think.
No.
No, I think it'll. I've been saying on my show that I think it might drift down between now and Wednesday, and then
So
maybe.
what are your projections for Wednesday?
Yeah. So what are my projections for Wednesday? All right, let's go ahead and take a look at that from this direction. Um, Troy just posted 51 cents. AJ's at 50. We've got Cat, James Cat at 58. We've got the street at 58,
James Catt is at 58.
as is the street. So he's right exactly on the same as the street. And there's been a few postings here and there around 60.
Oh, no.
So the range is starting to come down a bit. There was some.
Well, I'm posting 49 cents tomorrow.
You're posting 49. All right, so you'll be the low ball. Actually,
I don't think it's lowball, right?
I think there's one other person. Not it might have been Peggy. Peggy might have no, wasn't Peggy. Somebody came in at 49.
Hmm.
Can't remember who.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned because AJ's analysis is normally very accurate. I was at 47 for a while.
Ah,
I looked again at Troy and I looked again at AJ, and I actually found myself adjusting it a little bit. Um, but I just don't see us getting to 50. I'm going
okay.
to look again tonight and then come out with a number tomorrow, but it's going to be a stretch getting to 50.
All right. Now, Troy says, now everybody's talking about the margins, everybody. I mean,
Yeah.
that seems to be the number one thing people are talking about. Troy came in at 13.2.
Yeah.
Is that something like you think it might end up?
Yeah, I'm actually a little bit lighter than that. I'm actually below 13 right now, but so much depends on the ZEV credits, so much depends upon the
Sure.
ZEV credits because they're now a very substantial portion of the total earnings.
Uh-huh.
And the other thing is, I think we're going to see the margin on energy go up a little bit.
Oh, okay.
So there's, takes and it depends. I mean,
Right.
it's really hard to tell.
James Catt was thinking that most people are underestimating the amount of savings on the cost of goods side, and that's where he probably is coming in a little
I
strong.
gave that a lot of thought, and I did try and model it out, given the number of Cybertrucks that are being built now. But the numbers are just not high enough, and I don't think the savings have come through the pipeline yet. He could be right. He could
Mhm.
be right. There are significant savings in the pipeline. The question is, well, where are they in the pipeline?
Right, exactly.
So there are so many little things that could have a major impact. But honestly, what is the difference between 48 and 53?
So I said this morning on my show, I came to this conclusion this morning as I was prepping. What difference does this quarter mean at all?
At all? Yeah, I agree. But the street were at 59 at one point. Is that where they are
Actually,
now?
they were at 66
Oh,
going
no,
into,
really?
a week ago.
Serious?
Yeah, a week ago, they were at
Oh, a
66.
week ago. Okay.
Yeah, it's just been drifting down
Yeah.
to 58. So at least that's most of the estimates that I'm seeing for the street are at
Yeah.
58. Yeah.
Yeah. The numbers are, yeah. I mean, as long as the numbers remain this low, the stock is going to continue down at these levels or under the 250 mark.
Right, right. So I think, Larry, that the reason I'm saying this, I'm usually very interested in the short term. I like to see the numbers, I like to see the direction they're going. But for now, when I look at 2025 and all the things
Mhm.
that are lined up that
Yeah.
are pretty much automatic, I mean, nothing is ever automatic in life, but we know we're going to get a Juniper. We know we're going to get a 2.5. We know we're going to get improvements in Dojo. I mean, there's just all these things that are known to be coming. If robotaxi doesn't happen, all those other things still will. Energy in Shanghai. I mean,
Well, you
all,
missed a very important point.
yes, I'm sure I did.
We're going to see the supercomputer initiated.
Yes, the cluster down in Austin.
This has as much impact as any of those items you've mentioned,
Okay.
because the turnaround time in new versions
Right.
is going to dramatically collapse.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
going to be a huge impact on the issue of when we actually get, robotaxis running.
Now, interestingly, Larry, as long as you're talking about that, I brought that up to Brian White earlier today, and he said he didn't know when it was going to go live or whether it already is live and didn't really have a lot of
It is
helpful.
not live.
Um, we also have Dojo, which was supposed to be at 100 exaflops by now, right? Wasn't that the AI Day expectation, October?
I don't think
24?
yeah, it may have been the expectation in October, but I think it's going to be late, based upon the fact that we've had, a thundering silence on Dojo for the last 4 or 5 months.
Okay.
And these things are very difficult to actually bring in. But, when you're starting with a brand new chip, so look, the computer, the cluster in Texas is not yet up and running.
Okay. Mhm.
So right now the cooling fans are not running. They would have to be running for those clusters to be running. I think we're probably a good 3 months away from initiation, which could mean another 6 months before we see results. Dojo, perhaps by year end, we need to get some indication from Tesla that it's happening. So these two events are going to be very, very important.
Larry, is it two separate businesses? Are there two separate goals from these two clusters? Or are they both basically trying to achieve the same thing, which is full self-driving completed and 100% working? I mean,
Yes, I'm sure they allocate different tasks to different components of the stack, of the two stacks. They have a lot of training to do, and then they also have a lot of data to generate,
right,
and so which cluster is going to be doing what, because they still have the clusters running, in the clusters that they've had running,
right,
they have those running, and they talked about being not constrained.
right,
But I think there's a big difference between not constrained and having 2x or 3x the compute capacity, right?
right, right.
So, so it's interesting. I took some family friends to dinner the night before last, and didn't say a word to them. They were sitting in the two back seats of the Cybertruck. My wife was in the front seat. Drove all the way there without interruption, without any problems at all, to this dinner, which was, I don't know, 12 miles away,
Uh-huh.
through fairly heavy traffic, in fairly complex environment. And at the end of it, I said, "Well, congratulations, guys! You've just been delivered here by Tesla." It's interesting because they're new Tesla share owners.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Now, she persuaded him, no, she required him to
Okay.
buy the Tesla stock. He was totally opposed to it. By the way, probably for ideological reasons,
I see. I see. Okay.
but she was absolutely, she's a very strong-minded young lady, and she required that he buy the shares, and he assented, and she's never actually selected stock to buy before. Anyway, bottom line is it drove them all the way there. So on the way back, of course, they were very interested.
Right.
It drove them all the way back, no problems at all, until we got to the house.
Yeah.
And their house is on a corner. Normally we turn left and then we drive into their driveway. The damn car didn't turn left to drive into the driveway. It stopped on the principal road that passed the house.
Right.
I thought to myself, damn it,
Uh-huh.
why let me down at this moment? But it was perfect. I mean,
Right.
absolutely perfect drive there, absolutely perfect drive back. And I'm telling you all this because, we're getting to a point where it really is real.
Yeah.
I could have been an Uber driver, turned up, not touched
Right.
any of the controls, delivered them to the restaurant, delivered them back to the house. Absolutely, pristine process. And this is through, I wouldn't say heavy city traffic, but, heavy, sort of suburban
Sure.
traffic.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And so Elon has said that the biggest problem now is having enough cases, enough interventions in order to get data to be able to correct. So
Well, that's why they need synthetic data. And I think that's going to be one of
right.
the biggest issues for the additional horsepower they're acquiring. So, building that synthetic data, building the cases for it, and so on. I think that's important.
So Larry, Wednesday, then instead of being real, I mean, yes, we want it to be the lowest margins, the lowest ever, and it's going to only go up from here. We want it to be the lowest profit. We only want it to go from here, and all those things are probably true. I think it's probably a very good chance. So, but that makes maybe the earnings call more important than the actual numbers. So I took a look at the questions that were being asked. I saw your posting on X today where you said it's just worthless and useless to even do this anymore on the Say website. So what is your top couple, three questions? What would you like to hear answers to on Wednesday?
The most important question, I think, is his notion of 2025, a sense of the rhythm of the year of 2025. What is his anticipation in terms of how he feels sales will flourish in the economic climate? Does he see the economic climate, improving through 2025? If it doesn't improve, what is the case? If it does improve, how does he see it going? We understand that, he's not going to talk about model introductions, but we want to get a sense from him of, what he thinks the rhythm of the robotaxi introduction is going to be. Is it going to be nothing for next year? Is it going to be is there going to be some trials, tests, some introduction during the course of the year? Those are the two issues I think that loom largest in my mind. I want to get a sense from him of his outlook. He gave us, in the first quarter of this year, he gave us a very strong positive message, which I think sustained the stock very well. But more importantly than sustained the stock, gave us a picture of what he was seeing for the future, this idea of this new book, not just turning a page, but opening a brand new book. And so for me, what would be most valuable is get a sense of what chapter of this new book are we going to be in the new year. I don't want to hear the details of the product releases, and I don't want to hear, him, repeating what's been said over and over again. I just want to get a sense of the rhythm of what he sees for 2025 and into 2026. So, that's very important to me because I'm a long-term holder,
Right.
and I want to get, some idea of where we are in this, reframing of the company.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So that would be your number two questions
Yeah.
that you have in
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah, I would probably edit and work on the question to
Yeah.
try and get it into a single question.
Mhm.
You know, position it as part of this, opening of the book. Does he see us, in just the introduction? Does he see us fully into chapter one? And how does that how does what is the rhythm of that?
Mhm.
The speed of that. We're going into, 2025, and this is the back half of the decade,
Mhm.
2025 to 2030. Give us a sense of what he sees the EV takeover, will give us a sense of what he sees robotaxi evolution. That's what I'd like to hear from him.
Okay. All right. I just thought of one myself right now as you were talking. A lot of people talk about licensing and partnerships.
Yes.
Um, I wonder how important are they really? I mean, they
They're
might,
very important.
you think they're very important. Okay.
I think they're of paramount importance. I think there's no way Tesla is going to manufacture 10 million, 20 million, 30 million robotaxis. I think it would be an enormous stretch, and it's unnecessary. I think it would be so much better for Tesla if Toyota or Ford or Hyundai would take up the cudgels of building those robotaxis, putting them on the Tesla network. I think that would get us to the 30, 40, 50 million cars very rapidly. So that's why I consider it to be of very high importance.
Okay, not necessarily for the bottom line, but for the mission.
No, for the bottom line,
Oh,
at the end of the day, Tesla's going to earn the robotaxi royalties,
some
and
percentage.
the revenue is going to be staggering.
Right, right.
The revenue of the cars they build are not going to be much, but the revenue from the robotaxi is going to be a fortune. So
Yeah,
what does it matter to them if they don't manufacture the
I see.
vehicle?
I see. Yeah, yeah. So even if they were only getting 50% of the royalty that they might get from their own vehicle, or even a third, it's still a
I
third.
don't know why they would get a fraction of the royalty. Why wouldn't they get the full royalty for the robotaxi? Let the car manufacturer build the car. They'll put in the FSD and
Or the whole thing. Okay.
yeah, yeah.
So the maker would
Or
get.
maybe they'll pay a percentage of it. That those are just minor
Okay.
issues.
Okay.
Those are negotiations. Look what they did. They gave away the patent on the charger. They just gave it away.
Yeah.
Because why? They wanted everybody to use their charging network. But they're going to earn the money on that charging network, and it's going to be a significant amount of dollars. I've done the sums on that and spoken to that number. And the same thing with robotaxi. Let other car companies build the cars and make money on the cars. There's, 15% margin, 20% margin, 6% margin. There's this little bit of money to squeeze out of it for some massive capital expenditure. Who cares?
Right.
But Tesla will provide the robotaxi software. It'll provide the FSD software, and the money to be made out of that is plenty to go around for everybody.
So one of the things I think in kind of in the same vein as your initial question, but much more specifically, I'm wondering about how he sees that next chapter with regard to 4680 specifically. Is 2025 the year that they ramp in Reno, in Berlin, in Shanghai? Are there going to be 4680s everywhere? And also, what about the Cato Road? I'm not the Cato Road. I'm sorry, the CATL batteries. I think that's 40 gigawatt hours that they've installed. Is that coming on stream anytime soon? Because between all of that, you have 700, 750, 790. You have something on the order of 890, almost getting very close to a terawatt of batteries that have been proposed per year. And if they are now doing very well in Austin, what does that mean for the plan?
Yeah, I mean, a terawatt hour, a terawatt of battery capability is gigantic.
Huge.
And it's quite clear from the global requirements, it's just a drop in the bucket.
Right.
You know, there are hundreds of terawatt hours required. So that would be an interesting question. You know, I don't know that he's going to be very specific in answering it, but if they could lay out some sort of strategic, give us an idea of the strategic plan for battery manufacture. The problem is that I think that they're going to hold that very close to the chest because they're dealing with supply chains and they're dealing with suppliers and they're dealing with customers. So they have to be, you know, they can talk in general terms. They're not going to be able to talk in very precise terms on that subject.
Yeah, but by the same token, they've told us 500 gigawatts at Reno was the plan. That was specifically stated. We've just heard with the Berlin expansion that they've doubled the expectation there. We've never heard what the plan was with Shanghai, but we have to assume that there's some kind of a number they're planning to do in Shanghai, and then 200 in Austin. I mean, so the math is kind of out there. So the question would be, like you said earlier, maybe just a rough idea. Is this now
strategic plan? Yeah,
strategic plan. Yeah, that would be lovely, I think, to hear. Anything else you can think of that you'd like to hear on Wednesday, Larry?
Good question. I would like to get his sense of what he thinks Cybertruck is going to do next year in terms of production. You know, are we going to get to is it going to be 100,000 or 200,000 or somewhere in between in terms of production? And the other thing I'm very interested in is global rollout of Cybertruck.
Yeah.
What is he going to be able to do from a global delivery point of view? What are they how are they thinking about delivering Cybertruck globally? Is it just not on, or is there a possibility of Cybertruck to, China at the very least? I mean, I think there's easily 100,000 Cybertrucks to be sold in China, easily.
Right.
I would be shocked if there weren't. And Europe is a difficult problem. I mean, to get a large truck into Europe, you have to buy it in the US and then import it into Europe as an individual, because it's really hard to homologate the truck for Europe. So that's more difficult. But, I think South America would be a big market for the Cybertruck. I think Africa would be a great market for the Cybertruck. Getting support for it and so on I think would be challenging. But, I think the truck has got great opportunity. I think China would be the right market, but who knows?
How do you think that your friends and people that have been riding with you in the Cybertruck see it in terms of just a regular city car?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I met a guy who became really good friends with. We became really good friends. We bonded over the launch. We weren't at the launch together, but I did meet him on the way on the road to the launch, and then had him drive the Cybertruck around when we were together, and he got some experience with it. And he's the one who told me he's going to buy a Cybertruck here in the US and export it to Europe. He was bowled over. I mean, just bowled over. Now, I guess, he lives in Norway on in a country area, where the Cybertruck would be extremely useful.
I see.
He owns a Tesla right now, and there's a Tesla charging station in his little village, right on the fjord. So, for him, it's a natural thing. So, but like when I take family or friends in the truck, they're amazed at how comfortable it is, how much like a car it is. And I use it functionally as a car, but having the truck capability is really an extra added bonus.
Right.
from my perspective. Now, it costs money to drag it around from a consumption perspective, and it's got these massive tires. I'm sure they'll cost a good penny to change, or if they get a puncture. I mean, my one nightmare about driving this truck was if I have a puncture on the way, or if I strip the tire on the way, what do I do? Because,
Oh,
there are not many places that stock a tire that's going to fit the Cybertruck.
I
But anyway, point
suppose you
is,
could carry a spare.
I could carry a spare. I thought about it, but I thought about it too late.
I
But
see.
maybe I will buy one.
All right, Larry, then switching subjects then, I'm very, very, as you know, I'm so focused on these bonds.
Yes.
And we had another day where we had over 11 basis point increase in the bonds. Stanley Druckenmiller, thank you, Jeff Lutz, for sending me the note. Stanley Druckenmiller, famous investor,
Yeah.
billionaire.
He's the guy that is he was the reason for me buying bonds so heavily 2 years ago.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So he has made a huge bet that treasuries are headed higher. He has got a huge bet that they're headed higher. So people are saying, well, what do you know? Right now I'd be betting they're headed low. Wait a minute. That yields are headed higher, that bonds are headed lower. That's his bet. Okay. Right now, I would be betting that yields are headed lower, bonds are headed higher, because it's ridiculous that they're sitting at 4.2 when inflation is supposedly solved, and when the Fed is supposed to be reducing.
He must be looking at the government's funding problems and the deficit.
Well, I just was going to say that, Larry. We got 𝐂𝐦𝐬𝐽 letter saying total U.S. debt has jumped by $473 billion over the last 3 weeks alone to a record.
Yeah, somebody tweeted the graph of U.S. government or U.S. federal debt, and it's like vertical. It's like vertical. It's incredible.
And the U.S. paid a total of $1.16 trillion of interest this year. It's the first year ever it was over 1 trillion, and it was 1.16 trillion.
Can I sing my dirge one more time?
Okay, do it again.
I wish to heaven this Federal Reserve had issued a 100-year bond at ZIRP. Now, the truth is, it wouldn't have made too much of a difference, because our debt was pitiful compared to what it is today.
Right. So
anyway,
this additional debt would have still been at 5%.
Yeah. And the reason that Druckenmiller sees this, constant increase in bond interest and directionally down for the bond prices is that it's not even the issue of the amount of interest we're currently paying. If you look ahead 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, it's extraordinarily frightening.
Yeah.
And one wonders, how in the heck does the dollar retain its value at this level?
Right. Yeah. So I'm looking now, okay, your position has been we were in recession, or we're going into recession. As I see the earnings coming in, as I see some of the other numbers, you and I have talked about this ad infinitum about the two economies. It looks like maybe that the economies that are doing well, the government, the healthcare, the services economy, these economies are doing well enough that it may be keeping us above the break-even mark in terms of GDP. And maybe the earnings, especially of the tech companies, might also be helping to elevate us out of this recession that you and I both thought was going to happen. Maybe
or did happen,
or
was
did happen,
happening,
and now
or is happening.
Right. So I've always said that after the election, all bets are off. The economy will start going again. Now, it may take a little longer if you keep the same.
Does that depend
party
on who wins?
Yes. If you keep traditionally, historically, if the party in power stays in party, it takes longer, but it still goes up. if you have a change in parties, the economy starts off right away, really starts to gain right away. So it might make a quarter worth of difference, but the result is the same. That my prediction has been all along that whether we're in recession now or not, next year is going to be bonkers, especially when you add in productivity.
This time is different.
Okay.
The reason this time is different, that's a very dangerous thing to say, this time is different. But the reason this time is different is because the party taking power, whichever it is, it doesn't matter,
Right.
faces a reality that no government has ever faced before. There is no room. There is no room for some big expenditure. You know, every single government that's come into power in the last 15, 16 years has simply added some massive bill of expenditure
Right.
as their introduction to power.
Right.
It can't happen again.
Right. Right. Yeah. So
so that your historical pattern may not hold.
well, so my reasons for thinking about the pattern holding are only those four parts of the economy that are so strong. And at some point, it's going to pull the durables up. It's going to pull manufacturing along with it. It's eventually there's going to be enough generated income out there to start to pull the rest of the economy with it, would be the theory, with or without the government involvement.
If you believe the numbers, you may be right. If you think the numbers are bogus, as I do, then you may be wrong. There may be a unfolding of the numbers and
Unwinding.
not an unwinding.
Restatement. Yes.
Yeah, they may actually pull the curtain open and we may see what the real numbers are. And so one theory is that the numbers are much worse than they've been giving us.
Right.
And there's a massive revision to come.
Right.
Another theory on the other side of the table is all the you love to have a rosy scenario, and that's the rosy scenario.
Yeah.
The Randy scenario.
So yeah, it's possible that manufacturing would still be a drag. It's possible that if manufacturing is a drag, that probably means that transportation or freight will continue to be a drag. If all of those are a drag, it's possible that housing will continue to be a drag. And especially if interest rates stay high, then housing probably continues to be new housing, building new housing will continue to be a drag. You've got commercial real estate, which is in the toilet. There doesn't seem to be any hope that they're going to start building more commercial real estate anytime soon. So, but I can see, based on my history in the bicycle industry and watching these trends, at some point, people have to go out and buy a new bike. They've waited 3 years now, and when I say that as an analogy,
as a proxy.
As a proxy. It's a refrigerator. Yeah. It's a water heater.
I don't think they've got enough money. I don't think they've got the savings or the capacity to buy. I think all of these rosy scenarios miss the fact that the consumer's bankrupt, the country's bankrupt, manufacturing's bankrupt. We can't live on we can't live on services alone. And the service. Look, the entire service industry or sector of the population has done very well.
Right.
Even when they've done badly, they've done well.
Yes.
And if you look at the market, the stock market, the companies that have pulled the market, the averages up, margins up, are all those, magnificent seven, none of whom deliver goods. They deliver services. Now, consumables are actually doing quite well on the Dow right now, so that kind of undercuts my argument. And maybe this is the sentiment, from the possible recovery. But on balance, I don't see the rosy scenario that you're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
But if your rosy scenario is correct, then Druckenmiller's case is, squared. It's doubled. It means that it's not just the issue of the debt of the government debt, but it's also the increase in personal expenditures.
Yeah, and so we're only 17 days away from the Fed decision. I have to correct myself yesterday, Larry. The employment report is not this Friday, but next Friday, not the Friday after the election. So it is on the 1st of October. I thought when it was on the 1st, it wasn't on the 1st.
1st of November.
I would say 1st of November.
November, yeah.
I thought when it fell on the 1st, it wasn't on the 1st, but apparently it is, at least this time. So we will have that number. We will have the PCE. We will have the beige report. I think that's tomorrow. So there's a lot of information that we will have between now and the Fed's decision. But there's a lot of chatter right now about not having another cut.
Yeah, yeah. You think Kamala would be happy about that?
It'll happen after the vote, so it won't impact the election, but it will impact her first quarter if she's the one elected. So what I'm thinking is that the bond market seems to be telling us that my belief that we've been in a recession since June was either wrong or that we're now moving out of it. Okay, that the bond players, and I commonly think, Larry, I don't know if you think this way, I commonly think the bond players are more rigorous than the stock players. You agree with that?
Yeah, I do. But the bond rate could be moving up for an orthogonal reason, and I've essayed that reason.
Okay.
The bond rate may not be responding to the economy. It may be responding to the deficit.
Which is inflationary. The deficit.
Yeah, I mean, the deficit is
printing
yeah,
money.
I mean, we're talking about, the currency plunging. I mean, if the currency could plunge, it would plunge, but it can't plunge because all the other currencies are plunging deeper. I mean, we're the strongest of the weak.
Yes. Yeah, it's true. Yeah, so you'd be talking about a worldwide issue at this point. Okay, Larry, I'm going to throw out a wild and crazy idea here. You and I have been talking about the two economies. So we've got the two economies at this point. If what I just described happens and the economy continues to go up, interest rates stay where they are, maybe even go higher. But again, these are not historically high interest rates.
No, they're not.
And if the economy is doing this great at these interest rates, then what's the big deal? So if interest rates stay where they are, if all the things that we see are just kind of continuing along and maybe even getting a little better, if inflation continues at over 3%, that under $100,000 person, I think, is going to start to get angry. And
I agree.
I tried to figure out what the heck could they do about it. And the only thing, listen to this crazy, stupid idea, but I'm going to propose, I'm the first to think of it, and I would hate the idea. Would it bring back unions? Because the union guys are doing fine. Boeing just got 35%. UPS got 40%. The dock workers got 40%.
To bring back unions, you have to have a working force. There's so little work. There's no working force.
Services, no, the government's all unionized. The healthcare industry is all unionized. So it would be the services industries that would unionize.
Maybe it's possible.
Yeah,
it's possible.
It'd be like, okay, that's the only way that I can catch up is to join a union. I have to do it.
But the services, for the most part, the services are doing a little bit better than the guys in manufacturing, right?
That's true. That's true.
So they're not the ones hurting. The guys that are hurting are the guys who are doing who are making stuff.
Yeah.
Physical labor. And that's where that's what we're trying to turn around. And they're the ones hurting the most. And they're going to need an increase. And that's going to hurt manufacturing. So what we need is Elon Musk to run the economy. I mean, Elon Musk would sort it out. I mean, look at the productivity of Tesla.
Oh, yeah.
Look at the productivity of Tesla. I mean, look at the productivity of SpaceX. Do you know SpaceX just won a $750 million contract with the Space Force today?
Today? Wow. I didn't see
this week it was announced.
Okay. I didn't see it. Yeah.
Yeah, that $750 million. It's
Yeah,
hardly news to the. So they won this $750 million, and what was it? It was this launch contract that the Space Force specially designed to try and encourage third-party launch companies, not Boeing or
right, right,
SpaceX.
right.
Well, there's nobody. So SpaceX got it. Why? Because SpaceX's costs, are killing the industry. SpaceX is blooming like a rose, and nobody can compete.
Yeah,
And why? Because SpaceX is just so efficient,
yeah,
so ungodly efficient. And what makes them so efficient? Two things: lower cost of manufacturing, lower cost of launch because of better technology.
right.
Sound familiar? That's the
Yes,
same story in Tesla. That's why nobody can make an EV in the United States, only Tesla. So, I mean, at a reasonable price, so at a reasonable cost. So that's just the reality. They should just let him run industry in this country. I mean,
Yeah,
anyway.
unfortunately, I think he'll eventually run out of bandwidth. Uh, Brian
Yes, yes.
Brian White, I think, posted today that he hopes he doesn't get any government office because he would.
I do too. Because if there's one thing that will stymie even the genius of Elon Musk is trying to run government.
That's possibly true. Okay, well, anyway, that is kind of my crazy, wild and crazy idea. One way or the other, though, I suppose will work through that in some way. I don't think they'll be revolting on the streets. I guess people will adjust as they always do. I do, Larry, on my positive side, though, my Pollyannic side, is I
Yeah.
do believe that we're going to see this even before Tesla's robotaxis and Optimus robots. I do believe we'll start to see the AI revolution starting to impact productivity in a pretty significant way by next year, and might
Yeah.
only be an extra
There's no
point,
doubt about it.
might
I
only be
think
a
you're
point or
right.
two, but it'll be big. Yeah,
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's the one great hope we have for this massive hole we've dug ourselves.
right. And it could solve all of it. It could solve all of it.
It could.
It washes all wounds. See here. The craziness of today included the Dow being down 344 while the Nasdaq was up 50.
There you go.
And some days that happens. And
As goes manufacturing in the toilet.
and the S&P down 10 and Tesla down $1.85, although it had been down more. And the Magnificent Seven was mixed. Well, not very mixed. Only Meta was down besides Tesla. The rest were up. NVIDIA was up $5.
We have to talk about NVIDIA one of
Okay,
these
let's
days.
talk about NVIDIA. Oh, one of these days.
Well, yeah, I think it's getting too late for me now.
Okay. Well, I do know that I told you the other day that Jensen Huang, his discussion last week, his interview last week almost made me go buy NVIDIA stock.
Well, you should be buying NVIDIA stock. It's a
Well,
long-term, it's a great long-term play.
Yeah.
Short-term, it's going to be very volatile.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Now we've got the Cathie Wood's down, but that's what you'd expect when the bonds are up 11 basis points. The bonds, of course, we don't have the pre-market, but we do have what happened today. We ended up at 4.2. So if the treasuries, if the Fed is at 4.75 now, we're only 55 basis points difference. It's just mind-boggling. Oil,
And you notice how so few people are talking about it.
yeah. I mean,
That's another subject for another day. We got to keep a list of these subjects. But that's a very interesting subject.
it is. It is.
People are talking like it's just normal. Everything's normal. Everything's fine. Everything's fine. As the fire consumes the house.
Right. But it's a slow burn, Larry.
It's a slow burn. Yeah,
It hasn't
you're
hit
right.
the alarms yet, the fire alarms yet.
Yeah.
Oil, after going up kind of responding, reacting to all the sell-off last week. Ended up today back at about 70.5 bucks for Texas Intermediate, $74 for Brent. So, right in the middle, not super low, not super high, but
Look, a year and a half ago, we would have been so happy to have seen
seen
$74.
$70. Yeah, no kidding. Natural gas up a little bit more. So it also had found a bottom and has been now coming back up again. And then gold finally found a top. So in the pre-market, it's down 440, but it's at 27.34 after hitting, I think, 27.50 earlier today. So it is at all-time highs. Silver, as mentioned so many times before, silver at a recent all-time high, but for that one time, sitting at $34 now. And copper unchanged at $4.35. Any thoughts about the precious metals, Larry?
Yeah, it's amazing how copper has maintained its value, which seems to indicate that there is a very good industrial production, going on. These the precious metals. I mean, I expected gold to be up, and it speaks to the uncertainty of these times and the potential, of the dollar declining, of a dollar decline to come.
Right.
And maybe it'll come,
And like you said, though, declining against what?
Yeah, I mean that's why gold is up, really.
Right. And so speaking of which, basically unchanged against the euro and the yen in pre-market, and Bitcoin, which looked like it was just off to the races, now it's backed off again, 67,699. Sounds like a good Elon Musk number. And there you have pre-market. Here we go. The pre-market for the Dow is, you know what? All three of these are basically unchanged. You've got Dow up 0.02, S&P up 0.06. Whoops, just switched. No, what switched was my app. So let's go back. Let's go back to where I'm supposed to be here. Here we go. Yes, 0.02. That's pretty much unchanged. Dow up. S&P up 0.06, pretty close to unchanged. The NASDAQ is up 0.08. It's almost worth talking about, but not much activity there. So
and Tesla after hours?
After hours, it was down last time I checked. Let me look again. Not much, just a tad. It is 23 cents down. So
well, I wasn't that interested, but we always end up with Teslas.
That's right. We have to end up with that. Parting thoughts, Larry, on this Good News Monday.
On the Good News Monday, my parting thoughts are that there's no good news.
FSD is almost there.
Oh, I mean, that's, I guess, how I opened. Yes, FSD is definitely, I mean, the only remaining issue with the FSD of any consequence that everybody's squealing about is the speed limit.
Oh.
The car won't get to the speed limit.
Yeah.
And I understand that. I mean, they're being very cautious.
Right.
I mean, the car is, they'll dial that up. They'll dial that up. It'll come.
And they have the flashing lights also. Is that
Flashing lights they haven't resolved yet. So that's going to be an interesting issue. And some signage. So, flashing lights and signage is my list. The speed limit is what everybody complains about. But
seems like a short list, Larry.
It's a very short list. Not an easy list to tackle.
All right. Well, you have a great evening, and we'll talk to you after the earnings call on Friday. Well, not on Wednesday, but on Friday. We'll get to hear what you thought about all of that on Friday. And as always, thanks for jumping on board and helping us celebrate Good News Monday. To all of you out there, it's been great talking to you.